Hey, what is up all you do-selfers? My name's Dylan Taylor and this is Dylan's DIY Workshop. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this tiny little succulent cactus hanger for my girlfriend for Valentine's Day. Hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so we start off by going to the bathtub and running some hot water. And I showed this in my last video where I made a bent wood headphone hanger, and you can check that out in the top right corner of the screen if you'd like. Basically what we're doing is submerging the piece of wood in hot water for as long as we can, or as long as the water will stay warm. This took about 20 minutes or so, but while I was doing that I went ahead and got my bandsaw ready. And the reason for putting the wood in the water at the beginning was because I was in a bit of a time crunch, so I just had to get this done. It was coming up to Valentine's Day and I was making this for my girlfriend for Valentine's Day. Now I'm making the mold out of a 2x6, and this was the perfect width for the piece of wood that I was bending. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting a profile that I've drawn on. It's just a curve, and you can make any curve you'd like, provided you'll still be able to clamp it afterwards. Here with the inside piece, I am cutting another strip out. This is basically replacing where the piece of wood is going to be bent, because you have to remember that we're adding material by putting the bent piece of wood in there. So just drawing it on by hand and holding my finger against the edge of the wood, I marked out about 1/4 of an inch, which is about the width of that other piece that we've got in the tub upstairs, and cut that off so that once I put the two pieces back together, there is a gap in between. And also, while it's still in the water, I'm getting my C-clamps ready. You're going to want to be able to put a lot of clamp force down, and you don't want a clamp that's going to break. So I'm afraid quick clamps are probably out for this one. I've broken countless quick clamps. So your best bet is to get a set of 8-inch C-clamps like I have here. I will leave links to those in the description. And here I'm taking the piece of walnut or the wood, whatever wood you choose, drying it off just a little bit so that it's not wet and dripping everywhere. And this was the tricky part, was trying to get it to actually go into the mold. I'm bending it by hand first so that there's not so much pressure on the 2 points while I try to clamp the two pieces together, but also my clamps don't reach that far, so I had to have the piece of wood pretty well where it needed to be before I could put clamp force on it. So I'm fiddling around with some screws here, trying to get it so that I can hold the piece of wood at the end and also bend it with my hands. It's acting as a third hand there. And once I get it into this mold, just very carefully, making sure I don't break it, listening for cracks, and I stopped as soon as I heard any little cracks or creaks coming out of the wood, because that's a sign that it's going to fail and snap. Once I got the first C-clamp on, the rest was fairly easy. I was still really careful though when I let go to put the second clamp on. I didn't want it to shoot out and, you know, throw pieces flying across my workshop. Not that I think there was that much tension on it, but it was still not something I needed to happen. Got rid of the screws here because we didn't need those anymore, and I just set this up so that it would dry. I had to give it quite a bit of time, and I think I needed to give it a little bit longer, honestly. And so while that was setting up, I decided to go ahead and make the piece that was going to be the hanging pot. And I have this small piece of what I believe is cherry. It's part of a burl that I cut up quite a long time ago. I made some crappy video about it. If you're really interested, you can find it on my channel. I used a quick clamp to hold it because it's such a big cut. It's really dense, and it's also really close to the blade. So the C-clamp allowed me to hold on to it and gave me a lot of control. And I just said C-clamp, but it's a quick clamp. What am I doing? I should just re-record this, but I'm not gonna. Then taking the hand sander and putting the piece in the vise, I just got rid of those milling marks. I had already sanded all the other sides smooth. You could use any piece of wood for this, or any part of a tree branch. It really doesn't matter. You could honestly use something that isn't even wood. It's up to you guys, and if you're gonna make something like this, definitely send me a message and show me pictures of how you created it. Now I'm taking a Forstner bit and doing this completely the wrong way. Not any way you should be doing this. Drill press would have been ideal, but since I don't have one, I just held the drill really tight in my hands and simulated what a drill press would do, and slowly came down on the piece because I didn't actually have the center of the bit to do that. And it worked out that the battery was almost dead, so the drill wasn't spinning very fast, and I could still hold on to it really tight. But once I got in there, it was smooth sailing, and the middle of the bit started grabbing, and I just had to drill. And I tend to rock the bit back and forth when I use a Forstner bit, just so that it cuts better, just because of how much force you need to put down on it. You really should be using a drill press when you do that, but like I said, I don't have one here. Cleaning up all of the dust and wood chips with the vacuum cleaner. And then with a 1/4-inch drill bit, I'm drilling the holes that we're going to tie the ropes around. So where I'm drilling them, I want to make sure that it holds through the wood itself and not just the bark, because the bark isn't really attached as the wood shrinks and also expands. So when I drill the holes that aren't that top one, I make sure that they're deep enough that they go right into the wood itself, not the bark. And you see here I had to drill that in 2 different attempts because it's about a 90-degree bend in the other 3 holes. And it was a little bit tricky to get them lined up. I did my best. The more difficult part, though, was to actually get the string to go through the holes, and I had to use some picks to do that, both a straight pick and one that's bent 90 degrees at the end. The combination of those two made it pretty simple to get this. It's almost like a fake leather rope. It's really flimsy, and if you pull too hard on it making a knot, it will rip. It does a great job for this specific project, but I don't know how many other things it would really be good for. I just tied some quick square knots around each one of those and figured out how I wanted it to hang, like which angle I wanted it to hang on. And what you didn't see me do was actually tie those 2 ropes together so that there is only 2 ropes. Right here I'm wood burning in a nice little saying on the bottom, and it says cacti plus cactu equals cactus, and happy Valentine's Day to my girlfriend. And now I'm using some of this mineral oil, and all it is some mineral oil. It's meant for salad bowls. It's really great. It won't kill any plants. It's pretty safe for most use. You can use it for anything. There you go. That's what I should have said instead of mumbling. Okay, so I just applied this with my fingers, and it looked really nice. Now we can come back to our mold that has the bent wood in it, and when I took it out, the wood kind of unbent itself a bit, and I wasn't too happy with that. It was just too big. Even though I was going to cut it down later, it just didn't have the bend in it that I wanted. So I went ahead, swept off the floor, and grabbed myself a bucket of hot water. And boy was it hot. Also the bucket leaked a bit, so that's why I had to put some towels around the bottom of it. And so I just held the piece of wood down in the water. It wanted to unbend as soon as it hit the water. It wanted to straighten back out, so that's why I had to hold it quite a bit. And then what I did after that was bent it kind of similar to the way that I did in the last video where I made the bent wood headphone hanger. If you haven't checked that out, it's definitely worth a watch. I will link that as a card right here. And the way that I did that is I just put some screws in the workbench and just kept bending it until it was the shape I wanted. I had to go back and heat it up with some of that hot water, get the moisture back into it, and then bend it by hand around these screws that I put in the table. It took me a couple tries to get the bend that I wanted, and this also allowed me to get the heat gun back out just like I did in the last video, and with that I got to dry the piece off and make it commit to that shape a lot quicker than leaving it in the clamps. So rather than a 24-hour wait, it was more of a minute-and-a-half wait with this heat gun. The only thing you have to be careful about with this is how hot it gets. You don't want it to burn the wood or anything that it's on. I had to be careful that the paint on my table didn't start to let off fumes. It ended up being just fine, and we got ready to take out the screws. And once I had the screws out, I went ahead and started sanding this. I only show you sanding it with the 100 grit, but I did use the 200 and also the Scotch Brite pad to get it nice and smooth. Here I'm taking it back to the bandsaw, and I've just kind of roughly put my thumbs on the piece of wood to see where I needed it to be, and I cut a little bit off of both ends. And here's how I want it to hang. You can't get a really good look at it. And from there I just drilled 2 holes. They were a bit smaller than the holes that I put on the hanging basket because I wanted to just tie a square knot in the end of the rope and then not have to worry about it falling through. I went ahead and found myself a piece of wood act as the base, and I used a tree cookie that had snapped in half and I just left laying under my workbench. Ended up being absolutely perfect, and I'm really happy with how it was also walnut, so it ended up matching this pretty well. To get this to mount to the base, I decided that I wanted it to be set into the base just a little bit. I drilled a bunch of 1/4-inch holes, which were the same width as the bent piece, and then once I had done that, I took my chisels and just carved out a path for that to go and just made it square. Ended up clamping the piece down to the table so that I could get a little bit more precision and force between the chisel and the piece of wood. Here's a little close-up of how I was doing it. It was a bit rough. I could have definitely done a better job at it, or even just used a router, but with the time that I had and how quiet I had to be, I just really couldn't. Here I'm watching a little bit of the new Top Gear, the Grand Tour. It's a pretty good show. Mixing up some 5-minute epoxy here. You have to make sure that you get it really mixed up. I also added in a bit of walnut dust so that it would be a darker color. Filling up that hole now and making sure I get it on all sides of the hole. And I even put just a little bit on the bent wood piece before I put it in. And I held it exactly where I wanted it to stay, which meant putting a little bit of pressure up on it. For the longest time, I think I just held on to it because I couldn't, from where I was standing, find something that I could put in it to hold it up. So I just held it until it was cured and then just didn't put any weight on it for the rest of the night. I actually tied the basket to it the next day. Here I'm filling the basket up with some dirt that I found from another cactus that was on my shelf. Just adding a little bit of water so that I can pack it down a little bit better and it stays a little bit nicer. And here is a moon cactus that has a bunch of little baby cactuses on it. Just with a little twist and pull and a big pair of tweezers, you can take one of those off. Now, I found out that the cactus was going to die if I didn't graft it onto another cactus. That is also a video that's going to be coming out in the next few days, so watch out for that on Tuesday's upload. That will be next Tuesday. I upload every Tuesday and Friday. I grafted that moon cactus onto a smaller cactus that will eventually be put in this hanging basket when the time comes that it's all fused together properly. Here I'm using a box to hold up the little plant hanger while I pull the ropes through with little tiny pliers, and I tied the first one and then figured out how high I wanted the second one to be hung, and right about there. So I held on to the rope where I wanted it to be, which was about 1 inch away from the knot, and then put the box back there and again held it to make sure that that's how I wanted it to hang. And once I figured out exactly what height I wanted it to be, I tied another square knot just to hold it up. Using a really sharp pair of scissors so that it makes a clean cut, I went ahead and snipped it square, left a little bit just for added character, and here's what it looks like finished, guys. I'm really proud of it. It turned out much better than I anticipated, and my girlfriend really liked it. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially Randy, Robinbird, and Mike Maxwell, the top tier Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you guys are new, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please share this video with a friend. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a big ol' thumbs up. We'll see you guys all next time. Peace out.